Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to Star Citizen with the mighty Jingles. Right now Star Citizen is in the middle of Invictus Launch Week. I appreciate that doesn't actually explain anything, so allow me to elaborate. Invictus Week is a massive annual trade and recruitment expo in Star Citizen, and outside of Star Citizen it's the game's way of attracting and showing off what the game has to offer to new players. There's a huge range of things to see and do, including but not limited to free rentals of every ship in the game, a flyby of a Bengal class carrier, and a tour of a Javelin class destroyer. As well as all of this, at the Expo Centre in New Babbage you have the Invictus Launch Week Trade Expo itself, where each day is dedicated to showcasing the products and services of each of the various different aerospace manufacturers present within the Star Citizen universe. It's all very slick, it's all very professional, it's all remarkably realistic, given that it's all taking place within an imaginary science fiction universe, but within the constraints of that universe it is all very realistic. I came away from Invictus Launch Week extremely impressed with the progress that Cloud Imperium Games had made, although not entirely fooled by everything that I saw, but impressed nonetheless. It was the realism, however, that I think is probably going to be Star Citizen's biggest feature and also biggest problem. Because while I definitely eventually enjoyed everything that was on display in Invictus Launch Week, bearing in mind that this is supposed to be an event geared towards attracting potential new players, people who have never played Star Citizen before, people who have never even installed Star Citizen before, I can't help but feel that Cloud Imperium Games have definitely missed a trick or two here. And it's one of their biggest technical achievements that's probably going to be the source of most of the problems that they're going to have in the game going forward from this point on. What are you talking about, Jingles? Well, that's a really good question. So glad you asked. I should probably explain. But first, let's just take a look and see what this whole Invictus Launch Week is all about. If you're a new player trying out Star Citizen for the first time, what you're going to want to do is take the tram to the Expo Centre in New Babbage. Actually, hold up, let me just back up there a minute. The very first thing that you're going to want to do after downloading and installing Star Citizen is ensuring that you pick New Babbage as your starting location, otherwise things are going to be a lot more difficult. So make sure you do that first, then take the tram to the Expo Centre. Once you arrive at the Expo Centre, you're going to want to head up to the Invictus Launch Week show floor. And it shouldn't be difficult to find, it is all extremely well presented and signposted. In fact, anybody who spent any kind of time at a trade expo or a convention of any kind, this is all going to feel very, very familiar. As well as all of the free stuff on display, there's also no shortage of merchandising that you can dip into your pocket for. It was here I ran into my first issue. I spotted a couple of leather jackets that I really liked the look of, and I wondered if I was able to purchase one to wear on my character. I wasn't entirely sure how, they didn't make it too obvious, but oh, here we go. Hold down F, which is the default interaction key in Star Citizen, and it's going to give me the option to buy one of these jackets, eventually. There it is. It was a little slow. Well, I can definitely afford it, and I don't have anything better to spend my money on. Confirm purchase. An error has occurred. Insufficient stock. What? There's 6 of them right there. What are you talking about? How can there be insufficient stock? I'm looking at them. Okay, this isn't exactly a game-breaking error, but I thought it was pretty amusing nonetheless. But I did really, really like the look of these leather jackets, and I was determined to buy one, so I thought I'd try again. Second time lucky. Confirm purchase. Hey! Purchase complete. I'm currently wandering around in some harsh environment heavy armour. I thought, you know what, let's try to wear my brand new leather jacket, even though part of the UI has been cut off and I'm trying to find the equipment manager. No, that's the vehicle loadout manager. There we go. More through luck than judgment. Clicked on the bit of blank space where the UI was hiding the equipment manager. Where's my leather jacket? I've been ripped off. It's just like going to a real convention. Ah well, never mind. It's only pixels. Let's go and see some of the ships, because that's really what Invictus Launch Week is about, showing off Star Citizen's hardware. And on the day that I recorded this, it was the turn of Crusader Industries. And these bad boys over here are Crusader Industries Hercules transports. I believe the white ones are the C2s, and the grey one at the back there is the M2. The C2 being the civilian version, and the M2 being the military version. And these are chonky boys. Now I have what used to be thought of as some fairly big ships in Star Citizen. I have the Aegis Dynamics Retaliator Heavy Bomber, and I have the Roberts Space Industries Constellation Andromeda. Yeah, you might not realise it, but I've been a Star Citizen backer since the 25th of December 2013. Yes, it has been a while, I know. Look, I'll prove it. Here's my access to the Chairman's Club. I have the rank of High Admiral. I could even download my own High Admiral certificate. Oh. Alright, well, never mind about that. As a member of the Chairman's Club, I also have access to the Concierge Forums. God damn it, Chris, you had one job. Anyway, moving on swiftly. We're inside the Hercules. Let's take a look at the bridge. This thing really is huge. And exquisitely detailed. I mean, there are some plenty big ships in Elite as well. Some of them, like the Anaconda, the Corvette, and the Cutter, probably bigger than this, but this isn't even close to being the biggest ship in Star Citizen. And the interior of all of the ships in Star Citizen is modelled to this exquisite level of detail, and most of it's functional as well. I mean, when you get into a cockpit, we're not quite talking DCS World levels of cockpit functionality, but it's not that far off. And it was this kind of complexity and detail that kind of scared me away from Star Citizen. Despite the fact that I have been a backer of Star Citizen since 2013. My God, I was only 43. That was a while ago. But despite the fact that I have been a backer of Star Citizen for 8 years, when ships eventually became available for test flight, and I saw the bewildering array of keyboard commands, it terrified me. The thing is, you don't need to know them all. In fact, you know what, full disclosure, I didn't even really learn how to properly take off, fly to a destination and land in Star Citizen until this week. Despite being a backer of this game since Christmas Day 2013, I didn't really know how to fly any of the ships that I owned until just a couple of days ago. But I really wanted to be able to show off and experience for myself what Star Citizen had to offer during Invictus Launch Week, so in effect I was basically a new player because I didn't really know how to fly anything. I certainly didn't know how to take off. I definitely didn't know how to land. And it took some effort, and it was, and again I've got to be honest here, not entirely due to the control configuration, but it was kind of frustrating, and that was more to do with the way that Star Citizen has set up Invictus Launch Week, which we'll cover in a moment. But I did, as you're going to see, eventually figure it out, and you can actually get around in a ship in Star Citizen with nothing more complicated than the WASD keys, your mouse, knowledge of the fact that you have to obtain takeoff and landing clearance before you can take off or land, and it's also useful to know which keys to use to strafe up and down, but other than that, that'll do. You're not going to be winning any dogfights, but you'll be able to get around from point A to point B. The rest, you can just pick up as you go along. Anyway, that's enough of the Hercules, very nice though it is. Did you know that Star Citizen has tanks? Because Star Citizen has tanks. They look a bit like that Polish thing. You know, the, what is it, the PL-01? Polish light tank concept thing? That's what they look like. And, yeah, they're on display. At least they were on the day that I logged in. They weren't on the previous day when I first tried to get this video done. I managed to collect a couple of hours of footage before the entire game crashed so hard that it didn't just kill the game, it also killed my PC and the hours of video footage that I'd carefully collected up until that point, necessitating me doing it all again today. But then again, I suppose if I hadn't had to come back and do it again, I wouldn't have seen the tanks, so it's all good. Anyway, that's enough of the show floor. I mean, there's a little bit more to see, but enough's enough. The show floor wasn't the only big draw for Invictus Launch Week. There was also the tour of the Javelin-class destroyer and the flyby of the fully operational Bengal-class fleet carrier. And in trying to get to see these two attractions is where I ran into what I think is probably going to be Star Citizen's biggest problem going forward into the future. And it's a problem that I'm not talking about the protracted development time of Star Citizen, which is common knowledge by now. Even people who aren't into games have heard about Star Citizen and how long it's been in development. But the reason Star Citizen has been in development for so long is because of all the new tech that Star Citizen was forced to develop in order to get the game into the state that it is currently in, which is a pretty good state. I mean, I have to confess, it's become fashionable to knock Star Citizen, and I've definitely been guilty of that myself. But it is in a pretty good state at the moment. It's not perfect, obviously. There are glitches. There are things that don't work. There are things that don't work the way they should. But overall, it's actually pretty solid. The problem is all of that new tech that they were forced to develop to lay the groundwork for the way Star Citizen has been put together is now pretty much working as intended. But it's the way that Star Citizen is put together, which is probably Star Citizen's biggest achievement and also going to be its biggest problem. You see, Star Citizen's facilities and cities and ships haven't been put together in the same way as other space games. For example, in Elite Odyssey, which also hasn't been entirely without its problems recently, but when you disembark from a ship in a station in Elite, well, first you kind of teleport from the cockpit to the hangar, so that's a loading screen. Then you walk from the hangar to the elevator and take the elevator to a very small concourse on the station, and the elevator is just a way of hiding a loading screen. The elevator isn't actually taking you anywhere, it's not moving, it's creating the illusion that you're in a moving elevator, and you can prove this because if you land on a pad right next to the entrance to the starport, it takes the elevator the exact same length of time to get you to the concourse as if you'd landed on a pad right next to the concourse at the far side of the station. What's basically happening is it's using that elevator as a way of hiding the fact that you're actually being moved from one instance to another. There's none of that in Star Citizen. When you disembark from a ship in Star Citizen, you physically disembark from the ship, whether that's climbing out of the cockpit, down a boarding ladder, or lowering a hatch and walking out the back of the ship. Once you've exited the ship and you're on the landing pad, you then pass through an airlock, which is fully modelled, take an elevator to wherever your destination on board the station is, and there are no loading screens because the elevator is modelled, as is the elevator shaft, as is the entire interior of the station. If you've arrived on a landing pad at one end of the station and the food court is at the other end of the station, and it takes 40 seconds for the elevator to get to where you've called it, well, that's just how long it's going to take because that's how far away the elevator was when you hit the call button. It's all modelled. There's no smoke and mirrors. They're not hiding anything behind loading screens. They've all built it to work the way it would in reality. This is what I was talking about, the level of realism contained within Star Citizen. It's probably Star Citizen's biggest crowning achievement. The way that they haven't tried to take any shortcuts and just instance everything, which is what they could have done with the technology that was available. It's what Elite has done. But that wasn't good enough for Star Citizen. They wanted to do it, well, you could say properly, and in order to do that, they had to put a little bit more effort in than simply buying a license for the Unreal Engine and downloading a bunch of assets from the Unreal Store. They basically had to develop the tech from the ground up before they could even start putting objects into the game hanging off that tech. And oh boy, have they put objects into the game hanging off that tech. Again, this is something that Star Citizen does quite differently. to, for example, something like Elite, which simulates the entire galaxy. Odyssey can do that. Everything's procedurally generated, with a couple of exceptions. There's very little procedural generation going on in Star Citizen. I mean, there is in some of the planet tech, but the vast majority is handcrafted and plugged into the infrastructure tech that has taken them so long to develop. And this is why Star Citizen has taken so long to develop. But it does work. So, credit where credit's due. I mean, they took on a monumental task, and it took a very long time for it to mature. Yes, Akizuki, I know. I'm getting to the point, don't worry. But, well, the technology, it works. But here's the question that I don't think anybody at Cloud Imperium Games stopped to ask themselves. Who wants to stand around waiting 40 seconds or more for an elevator in a game? I don't. I mean, on the one hand, I appreciate the technical achievement that Cloud Imperium Games have pulled off here, but when I get into an elevator, it's because I want to be somewhere. I want to be somewhere other than where I currently am. And I don't want to have to sit around waiting 40 seconds to a minute in order for that to start happening. Because let's not forget, once the elevator eventually arrives, it then has to take me to where it is that I want to go. So you can spend 2 minutes just waiting for and sitting in elevators between things happening in Star Citizen. Is it realistic? Yes, extremely realistic. Is it entertaining? Not so much. And I'm not just talking about elevators here, because let's not forget, the whole purpose of this video is to examine the new player experience in Invictus Launch Week, which is the whole point of Invictus Launch Week. It's to showcase to new players what Star Citizen has to offer. Come and check out all of these free ships that you can rent and try. Come and take a tour of the Javelin-class destroyer, which is planned to be the biggest player-owned ship in the game. Come and enjoy the flyby of the Bengal-class fleet carrier. So let's try that, shall we? So I'm currently in my Constellation Andromeda. Ah, there's the power on button. Okay, power on. Systems booting up. Now, all of these displays are fully functional, and they're also programmable. So, for example, I have a display up there in the top right that I'm not actually currently using. I want to set that to be my communications panel. Just click the menu button, and there it is, comms. I said, there it is, comms. Right, and now I'm going to request takeoff clearance.
You are clear to launch.
Eventually, thank you. So what's going on? Remember, I'm still actually quite new to this, despite backing Star Citizen since 2013. Are my engines even on? Is there an engine on button as well? There's power. Oh, the engines weren't on. Right, now I'm using the spacebar to strafe up, press the N key to stow the landing gear. And now we can start moving. So, scattered around the various different stations and cities during Invictus Launch Week are information displays that tell you where the fleet carrier is scheduled to do its next flyby and where you have to go to get the tour of the Javelin-class destroyer. You're going to have to fly to these destinations, so this would be a great time to figure out how to actually do that. Now, okay, and feel free to laugh, because honestly it is quite laughable, but yes, it did take me 8 years to figure out how to fly my ships in Star Citizen. I'm probably a statistical outlier there, however. At the same time, I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that somebody who has never even installed Star Citizen until Invictus Launch Week is probably not going to figure out how to do all of this on day one. I honestly do think it's a little bit much to expect somebody who is quite literally fresh off the boat to be able to figure out all of this, requesting takeoff clearance, powering up your ship, getting the ship airborne, stowing the landing gear, making it into orbit, accessing the star map, plotting a route on the star map, assuming you even know where it is you're supposed to be going, which is by no means guaranteed, spooling up the quantum drive. What do you mean, what's the quantum drive? Yeah, exactly. Selecting a target with the quantum drive, engaging the quantum drive, flying to the target, coming out of Quantum Drive, requesting landing clearance, successfully navigating to the designated landing pad, and putting the ship down without crashing it. Is it just me? Is that all just a little bit too much to expect somebody to master on day one? Considering that this is supposed to be Star Citizen's way of hooking in new players, I can't help but feel they're expecting a little bit too much of people who have never seen Star Citizen before. I can't help but think that a better way of showing off what Star Citizen has to offer might have been, well, yeah, by all means, the show floor at the Expo Centre, that's fine. That's all nicely signposted, and there is public transportation to take you there. But when it comes to getting off the planet into orbit and across the system to wherever the carrier and the destroyer happen to be at that precise moment, I can't help but feel that maybe putting them on a shuttle might have been a better idea. Because on my logging in for the first time, and while I am a bit of a noob, I am by no means completely unused to Star Citizen, but on my logging into Invictus Launch Week for the first time, I took in the sights at the Expo Centre, which was nice. Then I thought to myself, I'd quite like to see this destroyer and this carrier. And there are plenty of information displays scattered around telling you where they're expected to be next. It's not just a simple case of, alright, let's jump into a ship and at least make it into orbit, and then I can check out the sights. Oh no. They're actually doing a tour of the entire system, stopping at every station and planet along the way in order to put on a show, which means that it's not completely out of the question that you could find yourself chasing them around the system trying to catch up. Which is in fact what happened to me the first time I tried it. And let me tell you something, getting around this system takes a while. I'm not kidding. I looked at where I was, I looked at where the carrier was scheduled to do its next flyby. Oh, carrier flyby's due in 10 minutes. Shouldn't be a problem. Plotted the course, spooled up the Quantum Drive, and it took me 20 minutes to get there. I literally had to chase this carrier around the system in order to try to get ahead of it so I could see it do a flyby at its next stop. 20 minutes of this. Is it realistic? Within the constraints of the Star Citizen universe, apparently yes. Is it fun and engaging? Not really, no. And remember, this is Star Citizen's idea of a new player experience. Why couldn't they just have had it all in orbit around the planet that players start on? Why couldn't they have given them a shuttle to take them up there to show them the sights instead of expecting them to figure it all out for themselves on day one? Because there's a lot to figure out. And don't forget, this isn't a finished product. This is still an alpha. There is no tutorial. So, good luck with that. I'm no games designer, but I can immediately think of a better way of doing this than the way Cloud Imperium Games chose to do it. Stick your carrier and your destroyer in orbit around the planet where players start, lay on shuttles to take them up and show them the sights. And then, once they've been awed by the sheer spectacle of Star Citizen, then they can take their time figuring stuff out. Anyway, before we actually get to see the destroyer and the carrier, who wants to see a Jingles landing? I'm currently flying over the Expo Centre at night, which is definitely the best time to do it. You get to see the fireworks. And up ahead is the starport. Now I've requested a landing clearance, and that little sort of circle and chevron marker indicates where my landing pad is. So we've got, it doesn't actually tell me landing pad 1, 2 or 3. So none of these landing pad doors appear to be in any rush to open. Let's just climb a little and see if I'm missing something obvious. I see what looks like landing bay doors. One of them's open. Okay, I'm probably going to have to switch to an external view for this. Landing gear is down. Nice and slow and steady does it. Is this thing even going to fit in there? Let's have a look. Man, that is an awfully narrow gap. Oh, I'm not sure about this. forward a little, I think. And, oh, inches to spare. Sorry, kids. Jingles landing denied. Right, anyway. I've teased you enough. Let's go and see a Bengal-class carrier and a Javelin-class destroyer. So, at whichever system the destroyer happens to be docked at any given time, follow the signs at the station to the docking arm, at the end of which you'll find the airlock leading to the newly refitted Javelin-class destroyer, the Warhammer. There's an officer waiting inside the airlock to give you a quick talk, but he's not in any rush to do so. Much like the elevators, he will keep you standing around waiting until he's good and ready to talk to you, so I recommend you just ignore him completely and wander around yourself. They've kind of cheated a little bit. The Javelin is clearly nowhere near ready to be put into the game in its finished form. They definitely haven't fully modelled the entire interior of the ship. Some bits are done, and those are the bits that you're allowed to see. The bits that haven't been done have an armed marine standing in front of them, denying you access. I mean, this is realistic. I've taken part in a couple of ship tours myself during my 22 years in the Royal Navy. And you don't want people just wandering around, even when you allow them below decks, and they're not just doing an upper deck tour. There are certain parts of the ship that are classified, and civilians are not allowed inside. So, yeah, you know, within the constraints of the Star Citizen universe, it makes perfect sense that you wouldn't be given full access to just wander around and stick your dirty little civvy fingers into all the nooks and crannies on board a commissioned warship. But the actual reason why you can't wander around the entire interior of the Javelin is because it isn't actually done yet. But that's fine. What they have completed is the stuff that you would be able to see if you were on board as a civilian for a tour, so that's absolutely fine. And what they have done is a mixture of incredibly good and also incredibly stupid. And I say this as a Navy veteran. Let me show you the sort of thing I'm talking about. Let me just get out of this turret first, which was pretty impressive. And the overall look of the interior, this looks Navy. It looks real. I mean, I know it's not real, it's a starship, but it looks real. I really do have to give them credit for that much. Because if there's one thing that Cloud Imperium games are very, very good at, and hang on a minute, why do I still have some UI element from the cockpit of my ship stuck on the screen? Oh dear. You see it? Never mind. But if there's one thing that Cloud Imperium games are exceptionally good at, it's making things look like they work. And this mess deck, well, what we in the Royal Navy call a mess deck, in the US Navy the mess deck is the dining hall, but this mess deck, or sleeping quarters, is pretty realistic. This is more or less exactly what I had. It wasn't as good as this, but this is what it would look like. You'd be able to pull down a curtain or a shutter to give yourself some privacy, but yep. The only real difference is that we had them stacked 3 high rather than 2 high, but that's good. I liked the sleeping quarters. And here we have the mess deck for the US Navy veterans and the dining hall for the Royal Navy veterans. And again, this looks absolutely spot on. At the back of the dining hall, however, we get just one example of some of the unbelievably stupid and not even slightly realistic. And I'm not talking about the arcade machines, those are fine. No, I'm talking about the stairwell down to the engineering deck. How do you seal that? Because you would need to seal that in the event of a breach. Because if there's a breach up there in the dining hall and you're venting the vacuum, you need to be able to seal off the decks, and you can't because there's no hatch. They've got hatches in the corridors. On each level, on each deck, there are hatches separating the different sections, going, you know, front to back of the ship in layman's terms. But going up and down between decks, there are no hatches, so there are no seals. So if you have a breach up here in the dining hall, you also have a breach in the engineering deck. And it's the same when you go up. So a breach on any one deck, whether that be the engineering deck, the dining hall, or up here, wherever the hell this is, means you've got a breach on all 3 decks. And it's not just about venting atmosphere to vacuum. If you've got a fire on board, smoke's going to fill the entire ship. Oh, Cloud Imperium Games. They work so hard, they put so much effort in, they get so much right, and then they get so much wrong. I mean, what they've done looks good, and most of what they do looks fit for purpose, but, well, this doesn't. And you know what the sad thing is? You don't have to have spent a day on board a warship to know this. You don't even have to have spoken to somebody who spent a day on board a warship to know this. Although, that wouldn't have been hard to do. All you have to do is watch The Expanse. Oh well, never mind. So, how about that carrier flyby? It was worth it. I mean, this is footage of me and my M50 Interceptor that I actually did manage to salvage from the previous day, when most of what I'd recorded was wiped out when Star Citizen crashed and took the whole PC and my recordings down with it. And the carrier doesn't just do a flyby, it does a firepower demonstration. I'm not sure if you can really get the scale of how big that thing is, because it really is huge. I mean, one of those small, lower engine pods is probably 2 or 3 times the size of my Constellation Andromeda. Although, I did have one question. Why is one of the escorting frigates down there shooting up the station? Oh, Star Citizen, you so silly. You know, I'm just going to let them have that one. In the great scheme of things, it's not actually that important. Although I'm not too sure about the turret at the rear that seems to be actually shooting through the ship's structure. I think this Bengal class carrier is what you're actually going to be operating from in the Squadron 42 single player component of Star Citizen. But anyway, that, the good, the bad and the ugly, is Invictus Launch Week in Star Citizen. Overall, I think they made some very dubious decisions in how the whole Launch Week event occurs, particularly since it's supposed to be aimed towards attracting and retaining new players. It's almost like they're so impressed with their extremely impressive technology that they've maybe not dedicated as much time as they should have to thinking about how it's actually going to play from a new player's perspective. Although, what do I know? If you have taken your first footsteps into the Star Citizen universe as a result of this Invictus Launch Week, let me know in the comments how you got along and how you enjoyed it. Because despite the issues, I have definitely enjoyed it. I had no idea that Star Citizen had matured as much as it has. And I'm very much looking forward to spending more time in it and, well, catching up on everything that I've missed in the last 8 years. So, that was Star Citizen in general, and Invictus Launch Week in particular. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it's given you something to think about. And I'm pretty sure it's probably given a lot of you something to talk about. The comment section is in the usual place. You all know what to do. And as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.